Okay, this is the next in our series on the dictatorship of the proletariat according to Marx and Engels. We are reading the speech on the 7th anniversary of the International right now. This is a very short piece, but this promises to be very interesting. So, let's get started. This text is an excerpt from a report published in the New York World on 15 October 1871, headed by The Reds in Session, authentic account of the 7th anniversary of the International in London. The anniversary celebration took the form of a dinner on 26 September, which the World's correspondent, probably R. Lander, who interviewed Marx 3 months before, apparently attended. The dinner was held 2 days after the close of the London conference of the International, and the participants include many of the conference delegates. To remind people, the International was the international meeting of various communist, socialist, and at the time anarchist groups within Europe principally, but also from America and a few other areas, if I remember correctly. It was here that Marx expelled the anarchists from it on terms of a lot of different things. And we will get to that later. Marx had many such writings on Bakunin, for instance. Or on Proudhon, who was an anarchist. Let's be clear here, but he was an anarchist that was experienced in politics. So he understood that anarchism didn't actually work. So let's get started. Concerning the Internationale, Marx said that the great success which had hitherto crowned its efforts was due to circumstances over which the members themselves had no control. The foundation of the Internationale itself was a result of these circumstances, and by no means due to the efforts of the men engaged in it. It was not the work of any set of clever politicians. All the politicians of the world could not have created the situations and circumstances requisite for the success of the International. The International had not put forth any particular creed. Its task was to organize the forces of labor and link the various working men's movements and combine them. The circumstances which had given such a great development to the association were the conditions under which the work people were more and more oppressed throughout the world, and this was the secret of success. The events of the last few weeks had, unmistakably, shown that the working class must fight for its emancipation. The persecutions of the government against the International were like the persecutions of the ancient Rome against the primitive Christians. They, too, had been few in numbers at first, but the patricians of Rome had instinctively felt that if the Christians succeeded, the Roman Empire would be lost. The persecutions of Rome had not saved the empire, and the persecutions of the present day against the Internationale would not save the existing state of things. What was new in the Internationale was that established by the working men themselves and for themselves. Before the foundation of the Internationale, all the different organizations had been societies founded by some radicals among the ruling classes for the working classes. But the Internationale was established by the working men themselves. The Chartist movement in this country had been started with the consent and assistance of middle-class radicals. Even though if it had been successful, it could only have been for the advantage of the working class. England was the only country where the working class was sufficiently developed and organized to turn universal suffrage to its proper account. He then alluded to the Revolution of February as a movement that had been favored by a portion of the bourgeoisie against the ruling party. The Revolution of February had only given promises to working classes, and had replaced one set of men of the ruling class by another. This would be a coup, not a revolution. The insurrection of June had been a revolt against the whole ruling class, including the most radical portion. The working men who had lifted the new men into power in 1848 had instinctively felt that they had only exchanged one set of oppressors for another, and they were betrayed. The last movement was the Commune, the greatest that had yet been made, and there could not be two opinions about it. The Commune was the conquest of the political power of the working classes. There was so much misunderstanding about the Commune. The Commune could not found a new form of class government. In destroying the existing conditions of oppression by transferring all the means of labor to the productive labor, and thereby compelling every able-bodied individual to work for a living, the only base for class rule and oppression could be removed. But before such a change could be effected by a proletarian dictatorship would become necessary, and the first condition of that was a proletarian army. The working classes would have to conquer the right to emancipate themselves on the battlefield. The task of the Internationale was to organize and combine the forces of labor for the coming struggle. Okay, short and sweet. There's some pretty good quotations here. Let's pull some of them. Here is one. Then here is two. And then finally, here is three. So what have we learned here? We've learned that the International did not have a particular creed. It didn't identify itself as Marxist or socialist or mutualist or anarchist or whatever. It was a platform for all the different socialist groups to get together. Now, we have criticized quite heavily the kind of united front characteristics and whatnot, but I think that it's important to note that the interest is principally that, and this is written in the Critique of the Gotha program, what is important is that when you are entering into alliance with different groups, and you should enter into alliance with certain groups, you should always be attempting to, you should always require them for you to actually come into alliance with them, to accept criticism, to open their books for you to write and to propagandize within, and then you open, of course, you open yourself up to be propagandized within, and so on and so forth, so that you can absorb others, because we, of course, have the right of it. If we don't have the right of it, then we should change, right? That should be obvious to anybody. What is important is freedom of association and criticism and so on and so forth. Don't accept alliances wherein you're just going to be doing the dirty work for some other group that's going to be sectarian. Okay, the next bit. The Internationale, in this case, was established by the working men by themselves for themselves, rather than being a petty bourgeois socialism, wherein they're doing it because for charity reasons, because they weep at the harm that their system is doing to the working class and so on and so forth. Instead, it's in the hands of the workers, and therefore, even if, this bourgeois socialism would be nice, of the social democratic kind, that sort of thing is fundamentally never really going to be revolutionary. Any bourgeois influence within the party must be relegated to within the party being sorry, controlling and corralling it, running it through a tight sieve so that only the proletarian interests remain. The last bit out of this section is essentially talking about the fact that the Commune did not actually create a new foreign class government. It was a dictatorship of the proletariat, but that doesn't necessarily make it, in this case, a class government. In destroying the existing conditions of oppression by transferring all the means of labor to the productive labors and thereby compelling every able-bodied individual to work for a living, the only base for class rule and oppression would be removed. Basically, automatically, in the course of the establishment of the commune in the first place, class distinctions had already been destroyed, more or less. But before such a change could be effected, a proletarian dictature would become necessary in order to carry out that destruction. And the first condition of that was a proletarian army. The working classes would have to conquer the right to emancipate themselves on the battlefield against external and internal forces, of course. The task of the Internationale was to organize and combine the forces of labor for the coming struggle. This is a wonderful short piece and gives more pieces to the puzzle.